The iPhone has transformed the way we do things every day, and in the process, it's become truly a cultural phenomenon. And here it is. It's the best iPhone that we have ever created. This is iPhone 7.
Ah yes, 2016, back when technology seemed so amazing. And now in 2020, we're bored of most of it. And of course now we're essentially like the beginning episodes of The Walking Dead. Man, if we had known that 4 years ago, what would we have changed? I wonder what we would have changed. Oh well, enough of that. We're talking about the iPhone 7 here in 2020. Now, I've actually already unboxed this. We've talked about the fact that this is a renewed iPhone from Amazon. I want you to make sure to check out that video. I'll leave a link in the description below and in the end cards. But we now need to talk about the iPhone 7 in 2020. Is it a product? Is it a device that you can still use regularly? Is it all the cool technology that they told us it was 4 years ago? Well, I'll tell you all about it right after this.
This is, you listening to Travis.
What up, players? Welcome back. And for all you new people, welcome. My name's Travis and I do tech videos every single week and have a blast doing them. If that sounds like fun to you, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Anything I talk about will be in the description below. But for now, let's just get into the video. Now let's think about 2016, what type of phones were out at that particular point in time, and the type of technology that we have now gotten used to that was kind of breaking at the time. I mean, it was something we hadn't seen a lot of. We're going to talk a little bit about the camera stuff on this particular phone and the fact that this was the very first iPhone that was water resistant, IP rated. Among other things, this piece of technology was actually really cool. Now, the iPhone 6 had Bendgate. The iPhone 6S tried to rectify that. But this was really kind of the first phone that came out that brought a new realm of technology and, depending on who you ask, maybe a little bit of courage. Let's talk a little bit about specs. Actually, why don't we just go back to when they kind of announced this phone and see what Apple had to say about it.
We have created a product that is the most deliberate evolution of our original founding design. An aluminium body and formed sheet of glass describe a singular shape.
What they're doing year after year is remarkable. Every year, the iPhone is the fastest smartphone in the market, and that's continued even to this day. But what's happening today with iPhone 7 and 7 Plus blows that all away. A10 Fusion is a 64-bit, 4-core processor with over 3.3 billion transistors. It is a rocket ship. First, it has 2 cores that are high-performance cores. These high-performance cores run a full 40% faster than the A9 chip in the iPhone 6S and 6S Plus. And if you're coming from an iPhone 6 or 6 Plus, it's twice as fast than the A8. Here's what the team has been doing over the years. The A10 Fusion is now 120 times faster than the original iPhone. And look at the last 3 years, from the 5S to the 6, the 6 to the 6S to now the 7. The jumps in performance are just staggering.
If nothing else, when Apple talks about a product and they show all the really awesome video, you get super hyped about it. I'll tell you, I got super hyped and I realized this thing is 4 years old. Just watching the video, I thought, oh, it's a new phone, it's coming out, I can't believe, oh, it's this one. Oh yeah, the iPhone 7. Now, of course, the iPhone 7 Plus was the bigger version of this with 2 cameras and started a new kind of trend among photography, portrait mode. It was something that really wasn't done largely on a lot of smartphones, and they kind of came up with it. I don't know. How did they? Look, here's what they said.
What they're able to do is when we take a picture, is to use the ISP to scan the scene, to use machine learning to recognize people and faces, and then create a depth map of that image from the 2 cameras and the software. Keep the people in the front sharp and focused and apply a beautiful blur to the background. This is a huge breakthrough in what can be done a smartphone in photography.
So as they released it, photography was a huge selling point of this phone. The fact that it could take pictures the way it could with the sensor that it had and all the upgrades, especially with portrait mode now, it was a pretty exciting time. But they made a lot of changes to the phone itself. Let's talk about one of the ones that kind of flew under the radar a little bit, and that is the Touch ID. It's no longer a button. It introduced the Taptic engine. Now, They use taptic in a couple of different products, including the Apple Watch. And I've talked about this before. It literally feels like someone's tapping you inside of the hardware. Now, on your Apple Watch, it feels like someone's literally like tapping you, which is kind of a strange sensation. And here, it's not so much of a like haptic feedback, it's the taptic feedback. And while it sounded like some good marketing speak, I'll be honest, it actually legitimately is cool. But it's because they got rid of the actual physical button. So when you press it, it's making this fake kind of like feeling behind it that it almost feels like it's a button. It doesn't really feel like it's a button, but at least they tried to do something, knowing that they were going with a capacitive button rather than an actual physical button. And I believe one of the reasons they did this, and of course one other thing we're going to talk about in a minute, was to hit that IP rating, so that really the only opening in this thing is the lightning connector and the speaker holes, which of course you can fix pretty easily. But ladies and gentlemen, this was the phone that introduced courage. You know, this was the phone. This phone was the phone that started the removal of headphone jacks across the entire industry. Now, at first, it seemed like a really odd thing. They explained it like this.
Why we would remove the analog headphone jack from the iPhone. I mean, it's been with us a really long time. I'm sure you know that the source of this mini phono jack is over 100 years old, used to help quickly exchange in switchboards. Well, the reason to move on, courage. The courage to move on, do something new that betters all of us. Our smartphones are packed with technologies, and we all want more. We want bigger, brighter displays. We want larger batteries. We want faster processors. We want stereo speakers. We want taptic engines. We want all of that. And it's all fighting for space within that same enclosure.
Now, while they made good points about why they removed the headphone jack, it seems like what they really wanted to do was have a lot more earbuds and headphones use the lightning port. You know, lightning to the headphones directly. They even showed like some earbuds that did that. And I don't know, I haven't seen many of those around. What I have seen a lot around are AirPods, which ironically, they released the same year. And of course, we all know that became one of the hottest selling earbuds of all time. Like they've sold so many AirPods and now AirPod Pros that, I mean, like you see them no matter where you go. So the removal of the headphone jack actually became a cash cow for them. Pretty ingenious, Apple. And while some people will complain that that was a terrible thing, the reality is everyone seems to have kind of adapted. Even Samsung has removed the headphone jack from their S series of phones. It took a while, but they finally did it. So it was indeed this phone that started that. So if you're gonna hate any phone for doing that, this would be the one. This thing has the A10 processor, so it's super fast, snappy, and let me tell you something, in day-to-day use, there's nothing this phone can't do. I can't believe that a phone with a processor 4 years old is as powerful as this thing is. You gotta remember, this is the same processor as the current generation iPad, the low-end iPad. You can render and edit 4K video on this thing with no problem, and play some of the newest games. As you can see here, I'm terrible at Call of Duty, but this thing is running at a silky smooth 60 frames a second on 4-year-old hardware. That is incredible. Now, I can't really speak to battery life because as I talked about in my previous video, which you need to go watch, this is a refurbed unit and it only has 70% of the capacity of the battery. So that's not a good thing. I can't get through a day on this thing, but that may be because of that. So if you had a new iPhone 7, could you get through the day? Possibly, but the problem is this thing came out 4 years ago, and if you still have this, it's likely that your battery has been degraded as well. Because every time you charge and use your battery, it's degrading the overall life. Thankfully, Apple will tell you that in some of the screens, as I talked about in my last video. Make sure you watch that because that was the one reason why I'm actually gonna have to return this. But man, the camera on this thing is absolutely amazing. I'm super happy that even today, it stands up to some of the better phones out there. Now, of course, it doesn't have some of the cool features like night mode, and the HDR leaves a little bit to be desired, but the video and picture quality out of this thing is really surprising. And let's not forget the support. Apple is supporting all these iPhones with iOS 13 and very likely iOS 14 and perhaps even more. That's pretty crazy. Most phones you get don't get 4 and 5 years of OS support, and you can get it the same day that everyone else gets it, unlike Android where you have to wait for the provider and all the other things to happen, and then maybe you get it. If you have an iPhone, you're gonna get the update. Now the screen isn't OLED and it's not super amazing, but it looks really good to me. And I think anyone who's holding this particular phone in their hands can't deny that. Also, the form factor in this thing is so nice. It's almost like a rounded pebble. I really love the way it feels. But again, for me, just because of battery life, I can't go with this. Plus, I like larger screen phones. But can you? If you ask me, all you have to do is find this at the right price with a good battery life. This phone will easily get you through 2020 and 2021, easily, without a shadow of a doubt. Now, the battery, it might be an issue for you. Having said that, if you can get by charging it during the course of the day, this phone has the power to get you through super easily. If nothing else, this is a great phone for someone who may be just getting into iPhones, or if you have like a younger kid or an older adult, these things will work awesome for them. At the end of the day, is it going to be the cutting edge phone of 2020 and 2021? Absolutely not. But will it get you through a day doing every single thing you need it to do? Very, very likely. But what do you think? Is the iPhone 7 something that you could rock on a day-to-day basis? Tell me how old your phone is in the comments below. We'll talk about it. Might be kind of fun to see who has the oldest phone in the comments. But make sure you watch the video about the iPhone 7 when I unboxed it in my upcoming used series where I go through old tech in 2020 and 2021. I'm super excited for that. Make sure you check it out. Peace and love, peace and love. I'll see you next time.